Here's every tip you need to casually beat peak on hardest difficulty, Ascent 7, either by yourself or with your friends. If you're like me, it'll be by yourself. I will be talking about specific tricks that can help you speed up your pathing even when playing on maps for the first time, along with more general advice for newer players that I learned from my own gameplay. At the very beginning of a run, I grabbed the flare and the lantern and put them in my bag. You need a flare starting from Ascent 4 to escape the island, and you take cold damage at night starting from Ascent 5, and the lantern will help keep you warm. There is currently a bug where you can actually escape the island without a flare at the end if you just jump off into the abyss and die out of bounds. So in very specific situations, I might not even bring a flare, but you never know when it's going to get patched, so you should probably just bring it. This is more of a last resort if your items bug out or something. I'm going to be emphasizing speed a lot in this video because the faster you move through the maps on Ascent 7, the less you'll have to rely on item RNG to get you through a run, since you'll have to worry less about the increased hunger and night cold you get. So don't get those coconuts, they just waste time. One simple way to move faster is to just spam jump while running, as you maintain your running speed in the air even when you have no stamina. Don't do this when you have a ton of extra stamina, since you'll drain it for no reason. Spam run jumping is insanely useful for climbing up low slope areas really fast, and it's honestly just really fun gremlining your way up an area. There are currently 14 different map seeds that they cycle through every 24 hours, so while technically you can just memorize or look up the optimal path for each map, I really don't see the point of doing so, since half the fun of the game is finding your own path to climb up. Whenever I play on a map, I always look ahead when I'm running, and I usually separate the mountains into 3 sections, the left, middle, and right, and go towards the side that has the most amount of small rock protrusions, since smaller rocks equals more spaces you can stand on to regain stamina, which equals an easier climb. Also make sure that the area you choose even connects to the main mountain, since you don't want to waste your time climbing something that doesn't even lead to the top. Try to avoid big areas like these as much as you can, since you obviously need to expend more stamina to go up them, which only risk falling super far if you run out of energy mid-climb. When you're climbing up a mountain, you can press shift to perform a lunge that lets you jump far up but uses up a ton of stamina. If you time it perfectly though, you can lunge at the very end of your main stamina bar and not use extra stamina, so make sure to always press shift at the last possible second for a final burst. That also means you can save time and zoom up smaller rocks by grabbing a wall with a pixel of stamina, then immediately lunging without having to wait for your entire stamina bar to come back. Once again, be careful doing this when you have extra stamina, since a mistimed lunge can just delete your entire second bar. I always try to keep a sliver of extra stamina for every situation, because that lets you perform 2 free lunges with practically no stamina usage, and that slight extra distance you get can mean life or death in some climbs. You can climb up ropes super fast by pressing E space, etc., and even get a slight extra vertical jump at the very end, which can be useful in some situations. This is really only useful for perfectly vertical ropes, and even then the stamina you save isn't that much, but it's really fun to do. Okay, so I keep hearing that if you go into play dead mode from the emote wheel while falling, you take less fall damage or something, but I swear to god whenever I tried, I just immediately die, so it's probably better to only do it when you're 100% sure you have no other outs. You can tell where most ledges are standable based on the texture of the ground. More often than not, there will be a very clear color distinction between the side and the top of a rock, so use that information when deciding if a path is worth it or even reachable. The biggest mistake most beginner players make is doubling down too much on a path even when they clearly don't have the energy to make it. You can climb a majority of the mountains on every map even on Ascent 7 without items, so one tip I usually give if you're not sure is to climb as high as you can with only your main stamina and have just enough remaining so that you can also drop down and catch yourself if you don't think you can make it. It's okay to step back and check your surroundings for a second, because more often than not, there's probably a way easier path you can just walk up right around the corner instead of having to climb up a huge rock for no reason. When in doubt, just walk around or backtrack and choose an entirely different path, because there's usually multiple solutions for the same problem. The one tip I wanted to give that I'm honestly surprised isn't straight up common sense is choosing better starting points for your climbs. For example, for this rock, it's obviously way faster and safer to climb from this position, as there are many places to stand and rest on, but so many people unironically start climbing from like the complete opposite side for zero reason and take fall damage after running out of stamina, and then start complaining how a route is impossible when all they had to do was just walk around for 2 seconds. If I'm on a good pace, I usually reach the first campfire around the start of the night without having to use my lantern a single time. In the Tropics map, I always find a path that includes things like vines, these weird curve path things, and the small vertical trees, because more often than not, they'll be the easiest way to climb past a ton of sections than if you only rely on the mountain itself. You can save some time by jumping from a high enough elevation and landing on a vine to do an action movie side down. But just be careful you don't slam into a wall or hit a ground on the way, since all that momentum will transfer into damage. You can just press the jump button before impact to safely stop your movement. If you start taking random poison damage and you're not sure why, you probably have a tick on your foot that you can take off by quickly turning your camera to where it is and pressing E. Sometimes if I'm not in a hurry, I'll leave it on purpose for a bit so that I can eat it later for food. This is basically just free inventory space until I interact with it. You can climb straight through the treetops instead of having to always climb outside them. You can throw items at things like honeycombs and these exploding / poison spores on the ground to get rid of them. When it rains, your climbing speed is heavily lowered, but if you climb in an area with some kind of seating above you, your climbing speed won't be affected. Be on the lookout for scorch berries, as they'll be very useful for keeping yourself warm during the night and during the Alpines. If I have an antidote, I'll sometimes intentionally eat poisonous food to get hunger back or walk along the poison plants, then cure it with the item. In the Alpine map, you can usually spot where the Capybaras are by looking for the smoke coming out from a random area. If you can't find it after scanning for a while, that means it probably spawned near the ground for that seed. I usually try to incorporate the capybara area in my pathing, since the yellow winter berries that spawn with it are amazing as a food source. You can turn on a lantern and put it in your bag, where it will stay lit until it goes out, or until you take it out and turn it off again. There are times when this doesn't work, like it just turns off when you put it in the bag, so I'm honestly not sure what's the intended interaction, but it's good to keep in mind. If you have a teammate, you can heal up your bodies by staying close to each other, so if you're not too low on food, you can survive through the night by occasionally huddling up like penguins. If you're playing solo, you have to stay warm alone through lanterns, heat packs, portable stoves, or geysers around the Alpine map. Make sure to stay close enough to a geyser to stay warm, but if it starts shaking, then you're probably too close and should run away before it launches you into the air. If I want to go fast but need to get rid of some coldness, I'll usually just sprint over a geyser along the way to my next path. The Caldera is arguably the easiest part of the game, and starting from this section, you no longer take cold damage, so if you're not experienced, you can honestly just take it slow and wait for the lava to go down before proceeding. If you want to Giga Chat speedrun it though, you'll more often than not be running directly on top of the hot ground when the lava is down to get to the end faster. If you have something like a water bottle or energy drink, it will immediately remove the heat on consumption, so you can tank a few more seconds as you run across like a mad lad. You can also cook items by holding it in your hand and standing on a heated rock for a few seconds, so if you find some eggs and don't have inventory space, you can get a quick snack before continuing forward. I found that this sometimes doesn't work when I play with friends in the lobby, so it might be a connection issue or whatever, but it worked all the time when I was playing alone. Similar to the jungle vines, you can do a cool action move with the chains. The overall pathing for Caldera is pretty simple, but a general rule you want to follow is to not climb too high, as you might lose too much hunger if you take too much time. Stay near ground level just outside the lava heat range, and make sure to always have some kind of escape route if the rock you're standing on randomly starts setting itself on fire. After you get to the end of the section and you reach the final campfire, you want to throw extra items like food forward when you have a full inventory, so that you can start to climb in Kiln with a full stamina bar. The start of the Kiln is fairly straightforward. Look around for a bit and once again look for the areas that has a bunch of smaller rocks that protrude out, and choose a section that extends the farthest upwards. The most consistent way of finding a path for the Kiln is to look for these long connector bridges throughout the climb. Simply see where the start of the bridge is and try to find a path that will let you climb up to it. If you can't see a way up or it's too far, that either means you should backtrack a little and look for a way on the other side, or you might have to use an item to help you. There's a ton of chests that might straight up bait you into dying, so make sure to double check if you have a way back to where you are if you drop down for one, and if it looks too dangerous, then just ignore it and continue on. The main reason why runs fail here on Ascent 7 is honestly probably because of hunger, so try not to spend too much time, since unless you save a ton of food for the climb, you're going to have to speed up at some point if you don't get lucky from the chest you find. I recommend using things like energy drinks and lollipops on fully flat walls, as having too many bumps along the way can make it hard to climb properly, especially if you don't have much experience with your movement. If you just follow the fundamentals and choose climbs you can complete realistically, you'll be able to consistently find easy paths and make it to the peak. Extra item tips. I'm not going to talk about stuff like poison food, because you can probably just look that up, but when in doubt, just cook everything once if you can that's consumable, and not twice apparently, and don't eat anything green. Rope spool. You can place down a hair of rope spool on a wall to give yourself a very small vertical boost before you start a climb. Chain launcher. Always try to have the path of your chain launcher go over a standable area along the way, so that if you don't have full stamina, you can climb, drop down and rest, and continue the rest of the climb without having to reach the end in one go. Back throw. I try not to use my lantern for the cold as much as possible onto the Alpines, so if I'm close enough to a campfire and need to open up a little bit of extra stamina, I sometimes just chuck my back forwards to temporarily lighten my load, so I don't use any of the lantern. Last second heal. When you take excess damage or your stamina bar gets filled up with debuffs, you have a few seconds to perform actions before you go into the unconscious state. I always try to have some kind of healing in my immediate inventory, so that if I start falling a long distance, I can save myself by buffering an item midair, or by waiting to use it after the damage goes through. The timing of when to heal will depend entirely on the item you have. Medkits take a super long time to use, so you always have to start eating it a few seconds before you take the fall damage. Bandages are a little bit more lenient, but still need to be used as fast as possible. If you have an item like the All Cure, Pandora's Lunchbox, Napberry, etc., you have to wait until after you've already taken the damage before using it to get the heal off, since they can be used almost immediately. If I'm not sure if I'll survive even with the heal, or if I don't have any healing items, I'll try to quickly drop every item in my inventory along with my bag after I hit the ground, for a slight extra chance of staying alive. Also, when you run out of energy and you start falling, I found that it's usually better to just let yourself fall instead of trying to desperately grab at the wall and slide down, because I often took way more damage from the momentum when I had no stamina. Depending on your playstyle and your group, finishing peak on Ascent 7 might be way easier alone than with your teammates. Just be careful you don't go too fast, since if you're 200 meters or higher than the previous person or something, you might unintentionally spawn Scoutmaster and just die by yourself. On Ascent 7, you won't be able to revive players from the usual way near the campfires, but you can actually still revive players if you have the Scout effigy item. Even after many runs, I still die a lot even with the experience I have, because I get overconfident or try to rush things when I really don't have to, so don't worry about making mistakes and just have fun with the challenge. Or take a break and try again when the seed changes the next day. It's always interesting trying out new paths or playing with people with varying levels of skill, but as long as everyone's having a good time, then it doesn't really matter what the outcome is. Thanks for watching, and I hope this helps you in your future climbs.
3, 2, 1. Watch me whip. Watch me nay nay. Watch me whip, whip. Watch me nay nay.